I'm Val Johnson. Thank you so much for joining me for Interludes Extra. Check us out and enjoy.
Wow, fireworks just in time going off on the south side of Chicago. Either the White Sox have won their home opener, or this is an Interludes Extra. I think both may be true tonight. This is an Interludes Extra focusing in on voting rights. Please, if y'all pay attention to anything, please pay attention here. We're going to break down some information, things that you might not know. You may know some things that we don't know. That's why we're here on Facebook. Please use the comments and contribute information. The thing that we want to make sure we don't have happen is that we don't, as a collective, begin to lose our voting rights. And we know that they are in danger. As soon as this woman, her name is Stacey something, I think the former president knows her name, got things organized in Georgia and sent two Democratic senators out of that formerly red state, now blue state. All of a sudden now we got to restrict voting rights laws. We got to make it harder for people to vote. Man, which is kind of a replay of history, and Valarie, our host, will get into that. Once again, this is a Interludes Extra with Valarie Johnson. So before we start off, I want to just give us a quick synopsis, rundown of what happened, why we here. Okay. Now,
all right.
Now, this state is called Georgia. It's the Peach State. And
Georgia?
up until about 2 weeks ago, it was going to be the home of the MLB's first post-COVID All-Star game, which would honor Hank Aaron, and a lot of really distinctive social justice warriors who played Major League Baseball.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's not going to happen because Georgia's governor, Brian Kemp, decided to sneak off into a room, lock the door, gather around the other, happen to be white and Republican, legislators underneath a nice, beautiful portrait of a plantation, which goes back to Georgia's history, and sign into law one of the most restrictive voting rights pieces of legislation that we have seen, certainly of this year. Now, here's the fear, and this is the tip. This is the 411, everybody. This is the info you got to understand. Georgia's not alone. This is not about Georgia. This is about you and me, okay? This is about what's happening in every state, including, yes, your state, okay? Just because you haven't heard about it doesn't mean that there's not some legislator in your body of your state trying to push some kind of ricky-tacky law that they got passed through Georgia, okay? And you need to know that this is happening. So
okay, let me jump in just briefly.
Yes.
Just briefly. It's called, the new law is called SB 202, and it's a 98-page bill that was introduced. 98 pages. I don't know what they could be talking about
read.
For 98 pages. I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay.
And it's very disturbing. And we'll probably get into this just a little bit later. That
here's a really
no
quick
one
breakdown.
else was invited to see this situation.
Yeah. Right. So voters now, because this law was passed, we're talking about the law that had the knock at the door while the law was being signed. Voters will now have less time to request absentee ballots. There are new ID requirements for absentee ballots. It's illegal for election officials to mail out absentee ballot applications to all voters. Drop boxes kind of still exist in Georgia, but not really. Okay. Mobile voting centers are banned. Okay. So early voting expanded in small, rural, white counties, but not in the populous ones, i.e. like Atlanta, okay?
Or Columbus.
Now, if you were to offer food or drink, oh my goodness, you've been in line for 2, 3 hours. Here, Valerie, have something to drink. You thirsty as you
I'm
wait?
thirsty.
Can't do it. Can't do it, Peach. Offering food or water to voters waiting in line now, you are risking misdemeanor, and this ain't good. This ain't Missy. This is misdemeanor charges. Okay, like go to
not the
jail
not
charges.
not the recording artist.
Not Missy, not
We
Missy,
love
Missy.
the
Gonna
recording
do it.
artist.
No, not Missy,
Not
Mister,
Missy.
Mister Mila. If you go to the wrong polling place, which I've done in my life,
Me
it's
too.
harder to vote. So
Right.
it's not impossible. They're just gonna make it hard on you. So they're gonna essentially be, whatever tool you want to use to describe it. Um, so the Secretary of State. You guys remember the Secretary of State just recently? He was the guy that supposedly was the man of courage, the great Republican in Georgia who stood up to Donald Trump and said that no, sir, you cannot intimidate us. We know how to count our votes. We're going to do a great job. Remember that guy?
Yeah.
Well, Georgia has now essentially moved his position out of the whole process of counting votes.
So the
So
Secretary of
if
State is
this
no
law had
longer
passed,
required. So the
the
Secretary of State is
secretary
no
has
longer
been
required.
removed. He has been, quote, removed as a voting member, unquote, to the state election board.
I have a question for you. When
Shoot.
Brian Kemp was Secretary of State during the
Yes.
2018 election, and when
Okay.
he was running for governor
Against
as
Stacey
Abrams,
Abrams, of course. Yes.
did Secretary of State at that time were they a voting member in the Georgia?
Yo, of course they were. So yeah, so the current governor, if you guys just to go back just a very little bit before we move forward again,
Hmm.
he helped his office helped to count the votes that surprise surprise said he had more than Stacey Abrams.
Yeah.
So that was okay then, but now that's not okay. Okay, all right. And the whole idea they say is that runoff elections will happen faster. That was one of the outcomes they wanted. Now, why do you want runoff elections to happen faster? Well, in the state of Georgia, if you remember, there was a lag time because there were two runoffs that allowed the presidency to shift, that allowed the whole intention of the election to shift so that there
Hmm.
was more importance put on that election. And then people voting realized if they could miraculously send two Democrats to Washington, which they had not done in eons, if they could do that, they could
Decades.
actually shift power in the country. And that's what happened. So now they want to make that time shorter. So it's a runoff, and we just had the election again. Let's just do it again, right? Immediately. So
Do it
these are all
again.
problems. Now here's what you guys should understand, and we'll turn to Valerie for this, is that we have been fighting for voting rights as a people. And when I say as a people, I'm talking about people of color. And by people of color, I don't just mean African Americans. I mean people of color. I mean African Americans. I mean Latinos. I mean the AAPI community that is now understands in some form that they are a minority in America and can be targeted, not just by stereotype, but just being attacked for walking on the street, for breathing. Okay. So we've been fighting for voting rights for a long time. The biggest victory we had was with the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Valerie, what happened with the Voting Rights Act of 1965?
And before I get to that, and I like how you stated, Michael, that we've been fighting for voting rights for a long time. Let's go back 100 years before 1965 to the 14th
200
Amendment.
years?
Yeah, 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This happened in 1868. It was passed by Congress in June 13th, 1866, and rights were granted by the Bill of Rights to former slaves. So that amendment had to happen, but unfortunately, the amendment was not allowing after Reconstruction for people of color or former slaves to vote because when you are voting, you have the power to put elected officials who make decisions about where you live, how you live, and what happens in your district, county, city, state. Taking away voting rights just was important for the people in power. And why would we, even though we've written a constitution stating that all men were created equal, but why would we want to make
Well,
former slaves equal?
all
Men, all
men,
men.
right?
I'll just put it like
Because
that. All men. Yeah.
well, because by men they meant landowners who were white.
Yeah.
I was 3/5 counted as 3/5 of a man, and
Eh,
then you were counted as
I don't
maybe not at
know if
all.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I was in there at all. So in 1965, or actually, we were up to 24 amendments by 1964, and the use of poll taxes in national elections were started, or that was happening. And
Okay, now you gotta clarify what poll taxes are, especially since we mentioned Atlanta and Georgia. So there's a whole different idea of what polls are in that city.
right. So it's a matter of taxing you to vote. In other words, you have to literally pay money, pay taxes to vote. And then there were other things, and a lot of these restrictions and things were happening in where in the part of the country was this happening, Michael? Can you guess?
Was it in the South?
Yeah, the South.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a little weird. 1964, the 24th Amendment. They were trying to adjust poll taxes, so they canceled that out. And then in 1965, President Johnson at the time passed the Voting Right Act of
OBJ.
1965, OBJ, and there was a lot of protests, civil right out, outrage that came out and said, no, we should not have to be, I think, requirements of literacy and
There were
reading
literacy
tests.
tests.
Yeah, there was
Sometimes they would bring out a jar of jelly beans, and to vote today, you needed to tell the registrar the number of jelly beans in the jar, and you had to have the correct answer, or you could not vote. Now,
right,
that seemed to only happen when African Americans were trying to vote. Other people didn't seem to get those same tests. By tests, they were sometimes civic tests. So they
right,
would test them on the Constitution. They would ask them how many judges were in the United States, how many judges
hmm,
were in the state.
right.
If you famously watched the movie
Selma.
Selma,
Yeah, I was going to mention
you
that. I was going to mention that.
recognize the time in which the character played by Oprah Winfrey got smacked around. Okay,
Yeah,
and this is all because they made her go through pretty much every type of poll tax or voting restriction possible, and you saw it there in the film.
yeah. And so the Voting Right Act was, re readopted and strengthened. It kept happening, and also it happened in 1970, 1975, and in 1982. Because what would happen, something would pop up, and they would have to go back to the Voting Right Act of 1965 and, state again
Reauthorization. What
reauthorization.
was
So those
happening?
reauthorizations in 1970, 1975, and in 1982 would have to come. Now, I want to point something out. This was happening during our lifetime. 1965, not so much. 1970, not so much, but definitely 75 and beyond.
Okay, so the
Why?
last,
Why? Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Well, the reason is because there was a there were laws to check and to see, is it still necessary? Have
Right,
we gotten past this? So there's this idea in America that still continues that one day we'll get past racism. As foolish as that sounds, it just continues, and it permeates our legal system. Like one day we'll get past systemic racism, and then we won't need these laws anymore. Well, turns out one of the last times it got passed was during the George W. Bush administration, the
mm,
reauthorization of the Civil Rights Act,
right,
where he tried to do it preemptively so that people would look at him, George W. Bush, as someone who at least did something for so-called for black people, because as Kanye West said very wisely about George W. Bush at one point. He didn't really seem to care about black people when it came to Katrina.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he tried to change that image by taking the lead. I mean, this is a positive thing. George W. Bush should be applauded for this. He tried to take the lead to reauthorize the Civil Rights Act. Unfortunately, judges stepped in and began to gut the law.
Mhm.
And that's why we got to the point today in which every single state, just about, is trying to test the law. So, in a way, you can imagine it this way. Imagine that you have this house, okay? You got mommy and daddy at home, all right?
Okay.
And Georgia comes in and Georgia wants a cookie, okay?
They want
So
a cookie?
Georgia gets told they can't have a cookie, all right? But then
Okay.
Texas comes in and says Texas said, "Well, I want a cookie too." Now all of a sudden you got 43 kids going at mom and dad asking them for a cookie, okay? And sometimes they'll wait till dad moves and they'll just go jump on mom and ask her for a cookie.
A
Now at
cookie.
some point there may be a crack there, right? Somebody gets through because you got, I want a cookie, I want a cookie, I want a cookie, I want a cookie. It's like fine, just take one, okay? Just stop. This is what's happening all across the country right now. There are legislators in just about every state house who are saying, how about this voting restrictive law? How about this voting restrictive law? How about this one? How about that one? How about this one? How about that one? And they're just going at it. And they're going at it until they get one by. And the reason that Georgia is in the news because they got one by.
98 pages worth.
98 pages worth
I'm
of
just
law.
saying. I'm
They
just
got
trying to figure
by,
out.
okay?
98
So
pages worth.
so once they got it by, now you got to defend it. And they're in the space of trying to defend this law, which is, really hard to defend based
Yeah.
on the information that we've given you guys. Really hard to defend.
And
So much so
mhm.
that Major League Baseball, which is typically a political organization in terms of
Mhm.
a sports league, it's not the NBA, guys. It is MLB. Tobacco spitting, crotch scratching MLB, okay? They decided this is too much, Georgia. We're going to move our All Star game from Atlanta to Denver,
Mm.
which angered Republicans in this area. And then Republicans they said corporations shouldn't exercise political speech. Mitch McConnell said that.
It's it,
Turtle.
wow. I just I just
Ridiculous.
I just know that I'm glad to see that a stand was made and we moved it. The thing was moved. But
Well,
I'm
MLB moved it. A
the MLB,
corporation
yeah,
moved
they
it.
moved it. That
Okay.
corporation MLB, they moved it. And I
Right.
don't know what's happening in Colorado. Hopefully there might be some
Well,
voting restricting
Well,
act happening there.
Brian
We don't
Kemp,
know.
Governor Brian Kemp said that it didn't make a whole lot of sense because Colorado has equally restrictive voting laws. And
Mhm.
then he said it's hypocritical. Now, he said a couple other things. Now, it turned out they did a fact check on what Brian Kemp said.
He
Guess
wasn't
what,
true.
Val?
Did he pull a
It
Trump?
was.
Did he pull a
He pulled
Trump?
a TRUMP. Yes. He said that Colorado required photo identification to vote.
Right.
That's false. That's not true. He
Wow.
also said that it's just like Georgia because they stop people from doing this, and of course that wasn't true.
That
So
wasn't true. Yeah.
yeah, so they don't require it the same way that Georgia wants it to be required. Okay, in fact, Colorado does have fewer days in which people do in-person voting
Okay.
because they have a much better and more successfully run absentee and vote by mail system than
Mhm.
Georgia does. They've been doing this for years, okay, pre pandemic. So they know what they're doing. So,
Well,
according to Secretary of State, 99.3% of the Colorado primary voters use methods like drop boxes, absentee ballots,
mhm.
and voting ahead of time, ahead of election day.
Yeah, I believe
So
President.
it's not
Go
true.
ahead.
So it's not true. Surprise,
Okay,
surprise.
and I know along with the trial that's going on in Minneapolis, our president Joe Biden is he has his eye on this. I was just talking. I think Roxanne is checking us out right now. We were just talking about this earlier. Joe Biden said that he thought that this restrictiveness in voting was, I think, beginning quote sick and
Yes.
totally, irrepressible. He came up with some words that just didn't fit what you would think he would
Yeah,
say,
he
but
kind of like, when in the past was Jim Crow, this is like Jim Eagle. I mean,
pretty
he kind of
much.
adopted the bird and said the bird is much larger.
I know. And so I think it's important that we pay attention to what is happening in Georgia, what is happening. And you had mentioned to me Texas, right? Texas is also trying to do some things with voting as well, trying to change
Oh
some
yeah,
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and Texas is not alone, but Texas, like Georgia, is finding some success early
Mm-hmm.
on in testing voting rights
Mm-hmm.
laws. Now, here's the problem.
Right.
According to the Brennan Center for Justice, which is a group that looks at voting rights
Mm-hmm.
across the country, as of March 24th, there have been 361 bills with restricted provisions in, guess how many states?
20,
Higher,
30,
higher,
40,
higher.
48.
Oh, not 48, 47.
Oh my gosh.
So there have been 360 bills that have been advocating restricted provisions in voting rights in 47 states. Now, here's what makes it worse. Okay,
Mm.
um, this is going up. Okay, so around February 19th, there were only 253. So this is a growing problem. So if you think that you're exempt because you're not in Texas, in the Lone Star State, or in Georgia, and things are all cool with you, that's not the case. But let's look at Texas very quickly, very quickly. So
Okay.
in Texas, House Bill 6, that's what is come up there. It's one of a dozen restrictive measures that's going through the Texas legislative
Mhm.
body. Okay, now
Okay.
it makes it. Now here's the problem, that it makes it harder for people to participate in elections, and it has these criminal provisions to it. You can't outdo
Mhm.
Texas, right? Texas will
Right.
outdo you. Um, okay, so in there they have set up so if you violate these laws,
Mhm.
you are committing crimes. And if you're committing crimes, then you can be arrested. Now,
Right.
Stacey Abrams, this is Stacey Abrams speaking about the Texas law. She said it won't just restrict voter access. This is a quote from Stacey Abrams about Texas. It will
Mhm.
criminalize voting with harsh penalties. Voters and business leaders must speak up while there is time to stop it from becoming law. Now, thankfully, aside from these Republican legislators who are pushing this, Stacey Abrams is not a lone voice. Once again, you have corporate leaders. Michael Dell of Dell
Mhm.
Technologies has also come
Yay.
out. He's tweeted that free, fair, equitable access to voting is the foundation of American democracy. Those
Mhm.
rights, especially for women, communities of color, have been hard earned. Government
Right.
should ensure citizens have their voices heard. HB6 does the opposite, and we are opposed to it.
Right.
American Airlines, which you don't know, is based in Texas, also spoke out against this bill, and
Good.
also a Senate bill, similar one, Senate Bill 7 in Texas. And more than 200 companies have spoken out against it. Now, we always talk about the negative, right? And
Right.
then the GOP is like, it's cancel culture. You're trying to do out everything. Let's talk about the good here, okay? Let's give people their props, their roses, okay?
Mhm.
Coca-Cola in Georgia, Delta in Georgia, they have come out very strong against those measures in Georgia, okay? They've come out
Mhm.
against voter restrictive laws. There's this umbrella group called the Civic Alliance, and it has come out against these types of laws everywhere throughout
Mhm.
these 47 states where this stuff is happening. And they include companies like Salesforce,
Mhm.
Capital One,
Hey,
Microsoft,
know them.
H&M, HP, Etsy, Levi's, Target, all the way to Zillow. And there's like dozens of other companies that have also come out there. And we still shouldn't forget MLB because when it came to the Black Lives Matter movement,
Right.
we know the NBA took a lead there. It took the
Pretty
lead.
much.
Its players, its management, its commissioner took a lead there. Here,
Mhm.
MLB is really stepping out. And my girl Jamil Hill, mm, she says that MLB is on the right side of history. Okay,
Right. Mhm.
so they may get some flack, but they're on the right side of history. Now, I'm moving this forward. Okay, so Val, you interludes from the south side of Chicago. When I say every state, that includes Illinois.
Illinois. Mhm.
Okay, every state includes Illinois. So, so-called blue state of Illinois with the Democratic governor and Democratic state legislature and Democratic mayor in Chicago. It don't stop. In Illinois, there have been 13 proposed restrictive voting rights laws already this year.
Just this year
13 13, yeah, 13. 13 of them, okay,
in
according to the
2021.
data
Mhm.
data from the Brennan Center. They've counted 13 of these
Wow.
measures that are
Mhm.
floating around. Now, no, it's not Texas and it's not Georgia because it's 13 in Illinois, but Illinois is pretty much a blue state, okay? Now, in Texas, by contrast, they 49 of these measures floating around there, okay?
Wow.
Okay, so something is happening in Texas, but it's not just in Texas. It's not just in Georgia. It's happening everywhere. You can find similar numbers for places like California. You can find similar numbers in New York. Another so-called blue state.
I know, and I lived
It's
there for a
happening.
long time. Yep.
It's happening. It's not just a Southern thing. It's not just a
No.
Southern Republican thing. It is something that everybody needs to be aware of so that they are able to, when these laws make any progress at all, or even before they do, to contact your state legislator, the person in the House or the Senate of your state, and tell them you are against this.
Mhm.
You fought for these rights. Your mama fought for these rights. Your grandma fought for these rights. Your auntie, your uncles, your uncle with the sandals at the cookout, he fought for them. Okay, your silver fox uncle, I'm talking about
I
your
know.
Ron Isley uncle fought for him.
I know.
All of your uncles for your uncle with
Every
the big
day.
perm,
Yeah.
your big perm uncle from the
Woo.
Earth Fire, he fought for him too. Okay,
Woo.
they fought to drive their Cadillac to the voting place to get out and roll in, or to go to the post office and mail off their absentee ballot. Okay, don't take this away. This is for real. This is not a drill. It is happening. It's
It's
happening
happening.
now.
I
It's
will I
happening
will
now.
I will say this. For the last election, I've been looking in and checking in on my uncle Billy, and he's not mobile. He's at home, and I was able to literally fill out his voting and take it in. And he voted, although he was not able to physically go to the polling place to vote. We had a conversation. I signed his ballot. I filled in who he wanted to vote for, and we talked about this recently. And he just thanked me for it. He said, "Val, thank you." He's 82 right now, and think about that. Think about your older relatives, the ones especially who my uncle was like my mother. They worked in the cotton fields. There was a lot of rights that they didn't have growing up in Arkansas, but right now we have the rights, and they're being slowly taken away state by state. Please pay attention. Please pay attention. That's why we're here, just to give you the heads up. It's fun to chat,
Now
have a good
imagine
time,
what you
all
did.
that. Hmm.
You did to make sure that this member of your family could vote. And
Right.
imagine if the state could come back and say, well, how did you do it? You know, Valerie, there are certain restrictions in terms of speaking to a voter and
Exactly.
how you pointed out information to them. We're not really comfortable with that. And what someplace like Texas or Georgia might do is to try to throw out that ballot. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Now they don't know who he voted for, but they might make a guess
Yeah.
based on ethnicity, location, past voting history of that area, and
Hmm.
that's the problem. That's the problem here. Okay, I see that among the people that are may be checking us out is my boy Ray Raphael Williams, and I love telling
Yay.
that story. I love telling that voting story.
Yeah.
I'll do the short version of it tonight. Way back in 1992, uh, uh, once upon a time, we both were in college in
Hmm.
'92,
Hmm.
and Raphael, my boy Raphael, commandeered a nice vehicle so that all of us students who lived on campus
Hmm.
had permanent residency in the city of Chicago were
That's
able
right.
to go to our correct polling places by van, got dropped off, went in there, voted, came back out. I think we hit a record store too on that trip. We might go on the
Hmm.
Harrods. I might be embellishing a little bit here, but I know we got to eat too. I know Ray made sure everybody ate too, but it must have been about 12 of us in a van rolling around making sure that we exercised our right to vote, because for
That's
many of
right.
us that was the first time that we had the chance to vote, and we
Right.
did not want to let that go. Yeah, but man, Gardis, I see is in there too. He says the only reason why Illinois is a blue state is because of Cook County. The rest of Illinois is red as blood. Oh my goodness, aren't you correct? I know I've driven out south toward Midlothian and been shocked by the number of Trump flags I've seen flying without any kind of problem. And certainly in Illinois politics, when the Cook County state's attorney ran for reelection, Kim, oh
Kim
my goodness, Kim Fox,
Kim
very good,
Fox.
thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, when
Hmm.
Kim Fox ran, certain sections of Chicago who happened to be ethnically Irish and Catholic, all of a sudden seemed to be Irish Catholic and Republican, and began to put up signs for her opponent who was crushed in that election, just crushed like a little bug, crush, 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 because Illinois is, at least in Chicago, is very democratic. But
Right.
yes, the rest of the state is not the same.
No, it's
So the
not.
idea is this: I mean, Chicagoland area only sends so many legislators to the, to the body. All these other little communities, they also have a right to their voice, okay?
Right.
And
Right.
they may have legislators who have different ideas than we do. So we have to be aware of what's going on here. Yeah, Mount Greenwood. Yes, I
I
can
know. I
say Mount
just saw that.
Greenwood. Okay.
Mount Greenwood.
Yes,
There you go.
Mount Greenwood leading into Midlothian. Yes, they are. There have been Trump stickers and signs up. So yeah, I think it's just something that we should be aware of. We gotta know what's going on.
Mhm.
And in Illinois, there are these things going on. In California, there's some things going on. You guys got to remember, you probably don't think about California the same way that I do, but California has a Democratic governor who is undergoing efforts to be recalled. Okay. And he's now learned that he has to take it seriously
Right.
because California has a history of recalling a governor in our lifetime, a Democratic governor, and coming up with something else. That's how there was a governor Schwarzenegger. Um, so and we all know that New York's governor is running into some, self-imposed,
He's running into some,
self-inflicted
yeah.
problems there. So
Yeah, it
this is
was mentioned
dangerous,
it was mentioned earlier that
dangerous times.
Cuomo was supposed to be considered as Joe Biden's running mate, and Joe Biden answered the question, "I want a
Not
woman."
on Earth. Yeah, well, not on Earth. Well, I mean, that was a good call, Joe.
It was
You know, less likely that I don't think we'll be hearing the same things about Kamala that we're hearing about uh Mr. Cuomo, Mr. Nipple Rings. I don't think we'll hear that.
I don't,
I'm not the
and
only
it
one that saw it, right? Oh, come
uh
on, come on. Am
yeah.
I the only one that saw
No,
it?
you're not the only one that saw it. You're not the only one
We
that saw
we
it.
saw we saw that Valerie's former governor has, like, has pierced himself in his chest.
You know what? I thought he did.
Makes it hard.
I thought he handled the pandemic well, but then we didn't really know what he was doing behind closed
He
doors.
thought he
Do
did
we?
too. He put out a book and tried to make some extra money off of it. He
Yeah.
started showing up on his brother's TV show a lot.
Oh yeah, he was coming on CNN
Oh,
and
yes, he
chatting, and
was.
the two of them
He
were
was
having a
like,
chat.
"This is my time." Yeah, he was thinking, "Man, I get some more exposure. Maybe I might get a girlfriend."
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're moving on.
Oops.
The
Oops.
best way to make sure that your state is not proposing restrictive voting rights or voting laws literally within your state. As you said, Michael, check with your state legislator and the people that you've
Yes.
elected to represent you, your state representative, and people that go to these representatives and Senate that vote
Okay.
things on the floor because federally, literally on from DC, like the 1965 Voting Right Act that covered federally, that covered everybody. But unfortunately, as Michael mentioned, 47 states has laws on the books right now to restrict
Proposals.
propose to
So there's still
restrict
time.
voting rights. So there's still time. And
There's
right
still
now, I
time.
just wanted to mention this. This got popular during the time that things were happening still here in Georgia. Protect the Vote GA. That is the hashtag that's popular, and they actually have information on protectthevotega.org. Just do research. I did a little
Fair
research
Fight.
earlier. Please
Stacey
watch where
Abrams'
you do the
organization is
research.
called Fair Fight.
Fair Fight. There you go.
Fair Fight is another
Um,
place where you can get some good information. The place that I got some of the information for this evening was the Brennan Center for Justice. They
mhm.
have been a source for many news articles from AP to your local newspapers. That's where they've been drawing out their information because they're looking at this. The thing that you got to remember, and I'm keeping this short, the thing you got to remember, and I think we get it twisted because we look at people. I'm gonna say me. I'm gonna talk about me as an
Okay.
African American. Sometimes I think I look at people as change agent, as like singular as change agent.
Okay.
I'd go like, all right, so I elect this guy, and then this guy, he takes care of it, right? He does all the work that I need him to do. And what this guy tells me in this book, in other books, is that wait a minute, Michael, it's not enough. You got to support me while I'm trying to do this stuff, because there's a lot of other people that aren't supporting me, and they're making their voices heard, and they're keeping me down. So you gotta help me to help you. And some people have got this, and they work on the local level. They work in local politics. This is where things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Things start at the local level and they move their way up.
Up.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I know someone will throw the Koch brothers at me, so I'll preemptively mention them. The Koch
Okay.
brothers, Koch, Koch brothers, now they made sure that some of these things happen locally. Now, you could say
Okay.
that's a national effort, but they were smart enough to do this. What they did was this, essentially, Valarie, is they wrote out or had people write out laws that could be Xeroxed. Insert your name here as state legislator, insert your location here, and propose it into your state legislator. Now, someone nationally has thought this up, who happens to be in the conservative movement, and they then take it and then they send it to all of the states. That's why they're in now 47 states that are looking at laws like this, because that was a very specific tactic. It's
Yeah.
only recently that people like Stacey Abrams have looked at it from the other side and said, we got to do something to combat this. And God bless her, she stepped away from going this route, saying, like, I am the savior, elect me to the office. She stood back and said, we have to make the systemic change. And if she could do it, you could do it. I can do it. We can do it. And it's going to take all of us to do it.
Amen. All right. Well, I hope that this has been educational and eye opening for many of you. We would love your feedback. I see a lot of us or some folks are watching, and I'll put this on our YouTube channel as well. But just please, please,
It's not enough to elect the president.
it's not.
It's not
It's.
enough to elect a president. Okay? You
Mm-hmm.
still have to remain active. You don't get to take the next 4 years off
Mm-mm.
and then try to scurry back and reelect the president. You got to do the work. You got to do the work.
And do research for your local elections that happen often. They happen, and make sure that you have your voting card. Make sure that you know who is your representative. And for me, locally, and especially here in Chicago, know who your aldermen are. There in New York, it was, who did I have to know? I had to know who the assemblyman person was. People that represent you in the city, in your state, you elect them.
Right now, many of us, sadly and traumatically, are watching a trial going on in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
In most of your states, the person who was in charge of that trial, that judge,
Mm-hmm.
it was someone who was elected. So the people in some way had a voice in putting that person there to make sure that this trial that's going to mean so much to this country, is conducted in a fair manner.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you give up that right? Why would you let somebody take that right away from you? Don't do
Nope.
that.
Nope.
Don't do that.
Do the research. It's a little bit extra to do the research, but it is okay. I know I did that for the last election. I'm gonna do that. I had to educate when I left here and went to New York, educated myself on all of my legislators there. Now I'm re-educating myself on the legislators and people here in Illinois and how, who's voting on what rights and all of that. We have to know. We have to know.
And my
It's as simple as
goodness,
that.
I mean, if that's not motivation enough for you, just think about all your ancestors who couldn't do it, who were
Yeah.
denied it, were
Mhm.
denied that right, and then they fought for that right, and then they got their heads beaten in. and they got sent to jail
Mm-hmm.
over and over again until you
Mm-hmm.
get this thing that you may or may not do. I might be busy. I don't know. I might not vote. I might not be busy. I might be too busy. I don't know. Really?
Mm-mm.
Really?
Irresponsible and
You are
disrespectful.
responsible.
Mm-mm.
Be responsible.
That's right. If
Be
that is,
responsible.
if we don't say anything else, just no to vote. No to vote. And Michael, what's your name?
My name isn't Valarie Johnson, but this is Interludes Extra with Valarie Johnson. Thank you, everybody, for being out there. If you're watching this live, thank you for spending some time with us. If you're watching a view later on of this, know that we're thinking about you too. So we'll keep on this issue, and we'll be able to give you some more information as the days and weeks continue about voting rights. Okay, because this is an important issue, and we'll keep track of it for you.
That's
Thank you
right.
very much.
Thank
Valarie,
you.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. We're out, guys. Have a great evening. Thank you for watching the Interludes Extra. Please like and subscribe to Interludes, our YouTube channel. I'm Val Johnson. Take care.